Hello, Fallen Dragonite here again, and I am doing a follow-up video for my mini arcade series. And the main thing I wanted to touch on originally was just the HDMI output of the Neo Geo Mini. I was able to get a HDMI to mini HDMI output. It worked fairly well on my TV. I didn't notice any problems. There was stretching, of course, because it's a widescreen TV compared to that smaller screen. So it went to I believe it's 16 by 9 is what a widescreen is, but there are options in the menu for the display to actually shrink it down to the 4 by 3 aspect ratio so it looks more accurate. A lot of people say that it kind of renders blurry, but I didn't really notice that when I was playing it. In fact, to be quite honest, that may be because people are playing it on like a 4K TV or something. I'm not sure. I don't have a really recent HD TV to test it out with, but people say this is a little blurry, but it still plays fairly well. It's just not as good as a legit Neo Geo, which I do believe they have HDMI output converters for that now. But it is still way better than the Neo Geo X, because that did not look well, and you had no way of getting the correct aspect ratio on that thing. So anyway, now that we're done with that, we are going to tackle these machines again, because there are a few things I will need to cover now that I have a little bit more information, and that is I found a website called the International Arcade Museum, and basically I wanted to make sure that I was correct on how well these arcade cabinets looked. So let's take a first look at the Galaga machine, and I have the website on my phone here. There is the original Galaga marquee, and please excuse my camera, it does not have a damn focus on it. But as you can see, the marquee is completely accurate. Now then, I said here before that I was disappointed about this sticker because I thought it was replacing the coin slot. However, I may have been incorrect about that assumption because, as you can see on the legitimate arcade cabinet, there's that graphic on the bottom. It's not replacing the coin slot on the miniature console. It's just that the way it's shaped, they really have to fill in the whole space. And you can also see the cabinet artwork is also completely accurate, although you can kind of see my sticker is kind of starting to wear off a bit on the edges. Yeah, I had this thing in my backpack for a while when I played at work. It also is missing the console detail. Yeah, I now know what that's called, but then again, at this size, what do you really expect? So anyway, that is Galaga. So next up, we will look at, as soon as it loads the pictures, we're going to look at the Centipede machine, which I did praise for looking pretty much like the arcade cabinet. And while I bring up the picture, there is the original arcade cabinet. That is completely accurate. The console seems to be completely accurate, although it doesn't go down the side. However, there is one anomaly. And this is, I believe this is also on the Lego machine. It also has this anomaly. And that is the marquee. As you can see, there is the Centipede marquee on this thing. It's a little longer than you think. And there is the original Centipede marquee. It's been modified to actually stretch out and fit the machine here. So yeah, it's not 100% accurate, but it's more or less something they had to do in order to make it fit on the machine itself. Now then, crud, sorry, I actually closed out of it here when I was trying to bring it up. So we're going to look at the Bad Dudes machine next. Now, as I said, I really like how this looks. It's a great display piece, but there was one thing I had a problem with, and that is that I have never seen the original machine, so I made an assumption that it probably looked as close to the machine as possible despite running the NES ROM. Take a look at that marquee. See how the artwork looks? That is the original marquee artwork. Yeah, they altered it. They took the main image and just split it in half and just put it on both sides. However, this artwork is completely accurate. And let's take a look at the full cabinet itself. You can already see that there are major differences. This star field is sort of accurate, but it's not completely accurate. It's also missing the Data East logo. And as for the cabinet sides, that is completely inaccurate to the original arcade cabinet because it's just black with the Data East logo. Yeah, they're trying to make this look a little bit more flashy and nicer looking, which makes it good for a display piece, but it is not accurate to the original arcade machine, which is very disappointing. So yeah, I'm going to just put that all the way back here because we're not done yet. Because after I made my original series, I did get 2 more. So without further ado, we'll take a look at the Arcade Classics Rampage and the Arcade Classics Fix-It Felix Jr. Yes, indeed. This is the arcade machine from the movie Wreck-It Ralph. We'll get more into that later. First, we are going to look at Rampage. This was released about the same time as the live-action movie. And surprisingly enough, now then, it looks like the marquee image is damaged on the website, but there is the marquee image, and as you can see, it has the original marquee image, but it's not stretched out, so there's 2 little blue squares on the ends. Kind of disappointing, but it's a concession that had to be made for the machine. So let's look at the sides here, which is fairly nice artwork. We also got the console sticker here with start, jump, and punch. This, however, may be a little weird to people, but as I bring up the original right here, that is pretty much accurate, except for the fact that there is no Midway logo on the side. The console is accurate. The artwork around the screen is sort of accurate, although the screen is supposed to be much smaller on the arcade cabinet. But yeah, that is Rampage, and of course, we're going to take a look at the game itself. There's a nice Rampage logo. Now then, people do like to say that these are the NES ROMs on these things. And it does kind of look like the NES game. However, it is not the NES game. As you can see, you can select George, Lizzie, and Ralph. Ralph was not on the NES game. In fact, I think the select screen was probably taken from the Sega Master System. And of course, if you do not touch it after a while, when it's on the select screen, it just goes off. So we're going to look at Ralph. See, Ralph is kind of a modified version of George. Yeah, there's the pause, there's the jump. Yeah. And then I just like to play as Lizzie. Because, let's face it, she's basically the Godzilla of the game. And now we have George over here instead. And the music changes, depending on what monster you play as. You see, we have the volume switch. Game works pretty well. It's not the arcade original, but at least you know ahead of time it's not. Okay, that's enough of that. Because we also need to talk about Fix-It Felix Jr. And there is no real data about Fix-It Felix Jr. because I can't find screenshots from the movie. Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate. I've looked online to find screenshots of the arcade cabinet from the movie, but I haven't been able to find it. I'm sure they're out there somewhere, but what I can do is compare to what it's actually based on. And that is, of course, Donkey Kong. There's the Donkey Kong marquee. There's the Fix-It Felix marquee, and as you can see, it's kind of similar. There is the cabinet artwork, and let me bring up the picture. There is the Donkey Kong cabinet. The cabinet artwork is fairly similar. The artwork on the sides of the screen is fairly similar. The panel, the console sticker is sort of similar. It's blue instead of red. It is that baby blue that the original Donkey Kong machine is. So yeah, you can definitely see this thing is more based on Donkey Kong than it is on just being an original machine. And yeah, I guess I should have mentioned this before. I forgot to mention it, but yeah, the original Rampage machine was black. This is dark blue. But anyway, let's look at Fix-It Felix Jr., which still has the on-off and volume. And now this, to my understanding, is the original ROM because Disney actually released a Fix-It Felix ROM for this thing. And it's a fairly simple game. You're just walking around, fixing the windows. I find this is very easy, and it's extremely generous. Yeah, you heard that sound? It just awarded me an extra life, and it is very generous with the extra lives. But then again, it's not something that's impossible to lose at. I mean, by level 6, I was able to lose all my lives, and there's hazards and obstacles like birds that will come up every so often. Oh, there's the pie that gives you temporary invincibility, and it fills the windows up right away. And then, of course, there's like balconies and walls that will prevent you from going to certain windows in a certain way. I also have the problem that it only displays 3 lives in the upper corner. So there's really no way to know exactly how many lives you have. So, yeah, wasn't paying attention there. But yeah, there's no real way to know how many extra lives you have. And see, we fixed it, and they're throwing Ralph off the top of the roof. Yeah, so that is Fix-It Felix Jr. All in all, a nice little game. So now, then, let's talk a little bit more about the machines, because there is a few more things I want to discuss, and that is, you probably heard about that Arcade Classics released a Mortal Kombat machine. I've seen it in stores, I've seen reviews, and it doesn't really impress me. It is clearly the Genesis ROM, and it's been modified so the blood code doesn't work. I've heard a lot of people try to make the blood code work on that thing, and it just does not work. In fact, it's rated for ages 13 and up, so basically they can't put the blood in, which is one big problem. Mortal Kombat is the blood and gore and the fatalities. If you cut that out, what do you really have? That's the reason why the Super Nintendo version sucks so much. Another thing, it's a fighting game. Sure, they have the 6 buttons on there. The controls look like they work nicely, but why would you play a fighting game if you can't play with another person? I mean, sure, the arcade ladder's all well and good, but without the possibility of playing it with another person, what's the point? I mean, the Neo Geo Mini has the ability of connecting 2 controllers in it. So you can play games 2-player. You can play King of Fighters with 2 players. You can play Samurai Showdown with 2 players. Not so much with the Mortal Kombat machine. And then there's another little pet peeve of mine. It might be just nitpicking, but some purists are probably going to be pissed off about it, is that the arcade cabinet artwork on the side is not the original. It's not Johnny Cage on there with the dragon like you've seen on the original arcade cabinet. It is the Mortal Kombat 3 Scorpion picture, the modern Mortal Kombat logo, and a little blood splatter on the side. I mean, the marquee and the console look completely accurate to the original Mortal Kombat machine, but it just doesn't work that way. But it also opens up possibilities, because now we're looking at them emulating not the NES styles of graphics, but Genesis style graphics, so that does look like we might be opening up to more possibilities, especially considering it looks like Mortal Kombat's going to be their first 90s arcade machine. But beyond that, I also want to bring up some of the other machines released for Tiny Arcade, and one of the ones that really impressed me that I've seen reviews of is the Pole Position. Now, Pole Position, it does use the same controls. The joysticks just has a steering wheel on top, and this is gas and brake, but it looked really nice on the arcade, the Tiny Arcade. I am impressed with how that looked. There's also Dig Dug and Q*bert. I would like to do reviews of those one of these days. Mini Arcade, I do want to look at maybe Rolling Thunder or Bubble Bob, but other than that, there's really none of the Mini Arcade, the My Arcade that really impressed me right now, except for the Rolling Thunder and Bubble Bobble, and if I can get my hands on those, I will definitely review those. As for arcade classics, since we're looking into more Genesis-style emulation, maybe we'll see like Golden Axe or Altered Beast if Sega wants to get into on this. Maybe even lesser games like Alien Storm or eSWAT. Hell, Nintendo, please. You see this. Why haven't they tried to make a Donkey Kong game on this? It would work perfectly on these these little arcade machines. Donkey Kong Jr., put that on there too. People would eat it up. I'm pretty sure it would probably sell like hotcakes. And seriously, they have a 6-button controller. They're probably going to put Street Fighter on it eventually. Let's see some beat-em-ups like Final Fight. I already mentioned Golden Axe. Let's see. It's really hard to say what exactly they should put on these things, because we also have to keep in mind the technical limitations of these machines. I also wouldn't mind seeing Star Wars arcade on this, but yeah, the emulation would probably be really tricky, and Tron, I'm sure some people want to see Tron on this, but I don't see it at all because of the really specific control scheme that has to be done for Tron. But if they can somehow pull it off, I would applaud it. But anyway, that is my review. That's my wrap up for these. I may do more reviews in the future if I get more of these machines. I don't know at this point, but it is a possibility. So with that, that's my wrap up, and I will see you guys next video. Bye.